7 o'clock in Gardner, Kansas. Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the national. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if someone has to sing, we can do that as well. On baseball time. All right. We will start with presentation. Finance Director Matt Wolf will be presenting the Capital Improvement Program for 2023, 2027.
Good evening. We'll be presenting some capital improvement program highlights. It's a 5-year capital plan. You can see there's about $37 million dedicated towards street and stormwater infrastructure, about $3 million towards airport infrastructure, $1.1 million towards parks and governmental facilities, about $6.8 million towards electric infrastructure, $12.4 million towards water, and about $51 million towards sewer. Please note that the amounts on this slide show basically represent 2023 through 2027 costs. A few of the projects have some pre-construction costs that might have occurred in a prior year. You can see that in the agenda packet. There was a detailed CIP project reports, which talk about the full cost of the project. Also note that the years are basically to the first major construction year. So under street and storm, we have I-35, US 56, interchange improvements in 2023, the Gardner Lake Spillway, which is in 2023, and we have about $358,000 that the county has in SMAC grants for that project. We have an unfunded kind of portion for the local match. And one option we have is we could potentially debt finance our portion of the project with debt service coming from bond and interest fund. We have some reserve capacity, approximately $5 million, that we could dip into for this small project. This reserve capacity is generally used to safeguard against the risk of special benefit districts going delinquent, or so we have money to quickly respond to an emergency or development opportunity. Please remember that the bond and interest fund is primarily supported by property and sales tax. As these increase, our capacity will as well. So that is one option to make sure we can leverage those grant funds. I believe recently the county reached out to us and wanted a response if we were planning to use that or we might lose those grant funds. Then there's also Moonlight Rehab from I-35 to Buffalo Trail in 2023. Then we have a major project, Gardner Road Bridge over I-35. The major construction year is in 2024. Center Street Rehab from Main to 167th Street in 2024. A new project to the 5-year CIP is 167th Street, Center to Moonlight Reconstruction in 2026, approximately $10 million. We'll be applying for grant funds from MARC for that project. And then 183rd Street Rehab. On this page, you can see kind of what it looks like in the Special Highway Fund, which is the main funding source for these projects, which is basically gas tax, county sales tax, and grants. The revenues in 2022, we are planning to issue debt to reimburse ourselves for expenditures related to Waverly from 175th to Fountain Street and Main Street Reconstruction Project. This will boost the fund balance in Special Highway Fund in 2022 with a projected end balance of $3.8 million. This fund balance will be spent down over time due to the new debt service related to the aforementioned projects and future debt service for Gardner Road Bridge, 167th Street from Center to Moonlight. The projected ending fund balance in 2031 is approximately $660,000. So in essence, we have some really big spikes coming up for transportation infrastructure. We're planning to issue debt service for that, and we're gonna have a fund balance that we're burning through over time, which will level out around 2031. The large dip in fund balance in 2023 is due to utility relocation and land acquisition costs for the Gardner Road Bridge project. For park improvements, we have Veterans Park in 2023, Stone Creek Park in 2024, and Woodwood Park in 2025. We're planning to pay for this from the Park Improvement Fund. which is primarily driven or used park impact fees, and that's kind of driven by development. The fund balance in that fund is now $395,000, and we have an estimated $300,000 coming in each year for the next 3 years. Please note that a slowdown in development could delay the planned park improvements. Essentially, if the slowdown in development, we don't get the park impact fees, or the city might choose to waive some of the projected impact fees if the builder develops other recreational improvements of greater value that are aligned with our Parks Department's goals. These are 2 new projects to the CIP. For governmental facilities, we have City Hall improvements. These are internal improvements. Basically, if you take a look at around City Hall, the carpet's coming up, there's tripping hazards around, and the interior needs to be painted. That was scheduled for 2023. Then there's also, and the exterior improvements are going to be taken care of with the PMP program. The K9 kennel in 2024 is going to be partially paid for by donations raised by the Law Dogs program. Both of these are general fund. For airport infrastructure, we have construct turf taxiway in 2023, acquire land tract E in 2023, terminal building replacement in 2024, and reconstruct West Apron in 2025. The funding source for the local match is primarily hangar rent and fuel sales. These projects are heavily dependent on grants, and their timing and ability to move forward is depending on those grants. The airport capital improvements are funded primarily through the FAA and KDOT, with a small local contribution. The spike in 2024 in both revenues and expenditures is related to the new airport terminal project anticipated grant proceeds. For electric infrastructure, we have Substation 4 land acquisition. We have Cedar Niles Substation 4 in 2025. It's about $4.8 million. Then we have Substation number 1, T2 upgrade. Please note that I'm covering mostly the major capital projects. There are always like a collection of small utility system projects that are inside the agenda packet that you have. The funding source for these electric projects are charges for services, electric connection fees, and the electric fund balance is robust. In 2021, it ended at $13.6 million basically, or 51%. But keep in mind that 51% is actually kind of artificially low because our operating expenditures due to the polar vortex event spiked. So really the 13.6 million is probably closer to 80 to 90% of our normal annual expenditures. And then there's also a $3.1 million fund balance for the capital reserve. For water infrastructure, we have clear well improvements in 2023, 183rd Tower Rehab in 2023, the new intake structure in 2023 at $3.3 million, new water transmission line, construction happening in 24 and 25. That's a large project of about $8.25 million. Funding source for that is charges for services, and we have approved rate increases of 3.7% through 2029, system development fees, and the water fund balance is right now adequate. At the end of 2021, it was $2.3 million or 27%, and that's going to dip some in the next few years and then go back up, and that's why we have those rate increases coming. For wastewater infrastructure, most of these are new projects, but you just heard about them in the work session. The Wynwood Park Relief Sewers in 2023 at 2.7, and that includes design and construction. The Kill Creek expansion in 2026 at just under 29 million. The Line A and Line C are both kind of tied to that expansion, and it's for the Southeast Planning Area. It's in 2026 as well. And then also temporary Cedar Niles lift station in 26. And then we had a prior project that has been in CIP for a while, but the advanced nutrient removal, which is related to our operating permits for 2026. Funding source for these projects is charges for services, system development fees, and grants. So in preparation for this meeting, staff updated the wastewater rate study. And some of the assumptions we had were basically growth will likely be between GBA's baseline and high growth scenario. Kill Creek Resource Recovery Facility expansion, the temporary lift station at Cedar Niles, Line A and Line C improvements were all moved up from what they had in the baseline assumption at 2028. We moved up to 2026 because we believe that growth will be somewhere in between. All $3.4 million in ARPA grant funds will be used towards sewer infrastructure projects. The $500,000 transfer from water fund to wastewater fund in 2022 is the last year the water fund subsidizes the wastewater fund, and that the wastewater fund must maintain a fund balance of at least 25% of expenditures. In order to accomplish that requirement, we would have to have 4.9% increase in wastewater rates each year for 9 years starting in 2023. Please note the water fund cannot continue to subsidize the wastewater fund. Its funding capacity is already being used for the debt service for the Hillsdale treatment plant expansion and other water infrastructure projects. Starting the rate increases in 2023 avoids having to sharply increase rates and builds fund balance over time. This fund balance is then utilized to pay for the debt service, which jumps up significantly starting in 2027. The wastewater utility would run a large deficit in 2027 through 2030 and burn through the accumulated fund balance, dropping to 25% in 2030. In 2031, the ending fund balance is projected at 28% and has a small surplus, approximately $325,000, due to the combination of growth and rate increases that finally bring annual revenues in line with annual expenditures. This is what the impact would look like for residential customers. We are projecting increases of 4.9% annually, resulting in bills that increase from an average of $45 per month to an average of $69 per month over the 10 years. But bear in mind that the ultimate increase to these levels will be necessary, regardless of the increment it is implemented at, which is why staff recommends introducing increases over a longer period of time, rather than introducing much larger increases at less frequent intervals. Essentially, we're trying to avoid large spikes in rates immediately. So we're looking for general direction from council on a couple of different strategies. Essentially, the wastewater utility is an enterprise fund. It should be self-sufficient, but that's not always easy, and historically it's been subsidized by the water fund. So should we plan for the wastewater utility to be self-sufficient and implement rate increases to make sure it is self-sufficient? Should we review system development fees and how the cost of burden of growth-related capital improvements are spread between developers and the rest of the city? Should we consider using the electric utility to mitigate the wastewater increase? We can do this by a direct transfer or subsidy, similar to how water used to do so in the past. Or we could evaluate the current electric rate structure and possibly lower rates, which would then partially offset the impact of the wastewater rate increases. Regardless, staff is pursuing additional federal grants and has applied for Spark and BASE grants. Any grants or increases in system development revenue or any other influx of revenue could potentially lower the projected rate increases. Next steps is on June 6th. We'll have the budget policy discussion. I can bring back more information for you on this topic at that time. On June 15th, the county sends us the R&R rate, the revenue neutral rate. On June 20th, the presentation of the draft budget. On June 27th, the CIP will be presented to the Planning Commission. At this time, I'd welcome any questions regarding the CIP.
Thank you, Matt. Questions, council?
I've got one, and I think that Mark and I are going to be tag team in this one.
I have several things.
But I'm thinking particularly about this wastewater thing, because that's a conundrum, and the problem is that wastewater never makes money. And so we're looking at basically increasing people's rates over a 10-year period by a significant amount, by almost 50%, if I'm looking at the numbers right.
Fairly close.
So We had talked about doing another rate study around electric, knowing we had a once in a 50-year event with the gas prices happening, spiking the way they did, and causing us to have all sorts of issues with our electric fund for 1 year. We're still sitting at almost $17 million when you add the two funds together. You and I talked about doing a rate reduction to offset the water and wastewater. Now, originally it was going to be for water to see if we can get rid of that 3.7% increase annually. But now we've got a 4.6% annual increase in wastewater they're going to be dealing with. I think it's time. I think it's time we start looking at a significant rate reduction in electric.
I've always said that for almost a decade.
Oh, I know that, but I mean, we've got no choice now. I mean, we've got no choice. We're going to be pricing people right out of our city.
Well, electric has nothing to do with water.
I understand that.
And
They're all on the same bill.
regardless of wastewater being a rate increase, electric should be decreased. We should be giving a reduction to everybody because we've been overcharging essentially over a period of time. Some of that was accidental, some of that was on purpose, right? Because we estimate low for our revenues and we overestimate on our expenses, conservative, smart, right? But then things go well year after year and you have a hot summer and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And we delay this project. And before long, the fund grows and it grows and it grows, and then the winds that are blowing up here, we do something or don't do something. So yes, electric absolutely needs to be looked at this year. We need to look at reducing the rate or, and probably a rate, not just a PCA adjustment.
Correct.
An actual rate adjustment.
Correct.
And that could be over the next 5 to 10 years to spin down that fund. There's several components that need to go into that because you won't have 17 million to actually play with at the end of that.
No.
But yes, it needs to happen this year.
Yeah, and Mark, we were talking about this earlier, that maybe not a full rate study, but maybe internally looking.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm more than happy to work with staff on this, but I would like to, we've done a good job at the last couple rate studies of eliminating classes that were somewhat redundant or unnecessary.
Yep.
Each rate study you unroll and reallocate. We've done a good job of trying to eliminate one class from subsidizing another. And anytime the system changes, of course, you kind of need to do that again. But we could probably at this point take the numbers we have and calculate a rate adjustment without doing a full-blown unpack repack. And then my recommendation would be that while we're doing that process, that we store all of that data and each year we review it.
I agree.
And going forward, we adjust this number, that number, particularly with the new smart meters. We should be able to pull up a simple report, I'm hoping, to get better information on usage, demand, etc. And that'll help us with some of our classification details.
And I think that any kind of a rate reduction should probably be more residential heavy. And one of the reasons why I'm saying that is because when you look at the previous rate study that we did and the changes that were made for residential, it actually hurt some of our all-electric customers significantly. And I think that we're going to need to probably look at something that's going to be more residential heavy to try to offset that cost change.
I would say
So-
it's way too early to say that.
Yeah,
I would say that, but I'm
And-
just saying based on,
Furthermore, the residential customers got the holiday,
yes, they did. And so did commercial.
but not as much of an impact percentage-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to have to look at it because every customer has been charged these rates,
Mhm.
regardless of who they were at what time. So commercial, residential, you've been here a year, you've been here 10 years. So whatever is applied, it needs to be representative for each asset class.
I agree.
So it might not be across the board, everybody gets 0.05 of a cent off. It might be this group gets this group gets this, because that would be what's equitable.
Mm-hmm.
So are we looking at doing the electric rate study independent of the wastewater. So the goal is not to offset wastewater.
100%.
The goal
Correct.
is to 100% look at rates,
I agree.
and regardless of the impact that it has on the overall wastewater
Absolutely.
utility. Okay.
So
Any reduction is going to help to offset wastewater.
Well, we can
Yeah.
change the timing of it. It could be, like you said, over 5 years, over 10 years, how the speed in which we reduce the fund balance could also be looked at in relation to the offset.
When the mayor and I were discussing this, I explained how I like to look at each piece in a vacuum. And then you have to put that back in with the overall picture, right? So the electric should not have any goal to offset 4.9% or 2% or 18% or anything of water or wastewater. The goal should be that this is in a time period, whatever it is, 5 to 10 years, we need to be at this amount based off our projections. We've got these CIP projects. We need to go update both of the numbers, right? So we haven't ran the KMEA number for what the operating reserve fund number should be in a while, I don't believe. We need to make sure that that's still the latest guidance. And then we need to look at that with a potential fudge factor for things like last year's event. And then the the capital reserve replacement fund, that was the $3 million. That was based off one turbine a decade ago. I guarantee you can't replace that turbine, particularly since it's built in the 50s, for $3 million. So that number needs adjusted. So maybe that eats $5 million, not $3 million now.
Yep.
So we need to look at all these values and then find out what that delta is and roll it back into the rate.
Is there other comment from council on this matter?
Well,
So,
oh, go ahead.
so I guess I'm following what you're saying. Do the 4.9 wastewater increase and look at the electric rate, not with that, but just what's the best we can do for electric, what's the best we can do for water, what's the best we can do for wastewater to get everything done.
Right, and we hope that that helps offset your overall bill.
And if we need 4.9 for wastewater, it doesn't matter what we need for everything else. We need it for wastewater, so that's what we charge for wastewater.
Well,
If electric, we need less than for just electric.
Right, because I don't want electric to subsidize wastewater.
yeah,
Right, no, I agree, no.
and
I just
any-
wanted to make sure I was following
Right.
and I agree.
And then, yes, we can reevaluate system development fees, right? We don't want to price ourselves out. We got to walk that fine line, like we talked about in the last meeting.
Yep.
But, I mean, everything should be on the table.
Can I ask real quick too, were the ARPA funds included in that 4.9
They were.
increase?
They were.
So, my thoughts are, I agree with what Mark says, I like that. What discussions, so you and the mayor talked, and you and Steve talked, seems like there was a lot of discussion before we got here,
So the mayor and I have, well, the three of us have a lunch.
okay?
which I haven't been at for a while.
But yeah, he hasn't. This has been ongoing for
Well,
years.
when do we get updates or for any of these discussions, or is this when we get an update?
Well, we talked about it at lunch today, so
Okay.
yes, now.
Just asking, because you guys both mentioned talking, so I just wanted
Oh,
to
well,
know.
Steve's referring to over years.
Okay.
We've been,
This was
this
just at lunch today.
Okay.
this is an issue.
I want us to all be open and talk about things fairly with everybody in the know, and it just seemed like a lot of this discussion could have happened, because you talked about you two talking, and you two just talked about talking, and we hadn't really heard any updates, but if it just happened today, I get it.
No, it did, but to be fair, even if it hadn't, we can't talk to any of you after we talked.
Right, but I don't know who you talked to, because I didn't know you guys all talked until just now, so I didn't know if you talked, or I just wanted to make sure it just bothers me a little bit. And Steve, you don't have to give me that puzzled
No,
look. I
no,
can have my opinion.
No, I understand that,
Thank you.
Tori, and I'm not saying that your opinion isn't valid, but it's a, the reason why we have council leadership is to have discussions about this kind of stuff, and it's in the agenda, it's posted online, it's posted in public. This is not stuff that's being done clandestinely behind the scenes, or any decisions that are being made that are going to be just automatically hoisted upon
I was
the-
not saying that, I just wanted to
Okay,
get it
because
out
that's what
there.
it sounded.
But it did sound like there was lots of discussions ahead of time.
There have been lots of discussions over years about this.
Yes,
I mean, the problem, and I'm completely in agreement with Mark in this regard. any transfers out of electric doesn't solve the problem.
No, I agree.
It's not, and that's what a lot of the discussions have been around. Well, how do you crack this? How do you crack this egg? And we've been talking about PCAs,
Right.
all right, with staff and with members of leadership. We've talked about PCA. We've talked about an adjustment to PCA, but PCA, to be honest, shouldn't be adjusted because of the fact that PCA is there to supplement or to offset large expenditures like the polar vortex event last year, where we lost $5 million in the space of like a week and a half.
I agree.
So-
I just wanted to bring my opinion out there.
No,
That's
I
it.
agree. I agree,
That's
and I'm responding. So, but I think that from the standpoint of electric, I've kind of come around to what Mark is saying, and that is we need to stay in our lanes. Water needs to stay in a water lane. Wastewater needs to stay in wastewater lane. Electric needs to stay in electric lane.
That's the first thing I thought of when I read the report.
Yep.
I don't understand why we're having one department finance another department.
Well, it's been precedent
It was
that's
thrown out
been
as an
set a long
Yeah.
time ago.
That's why we
actually.
discuss it out here.
Yeah, water's been subsidizing wastewater for years and years.
I remember somebody saying that.
Yeah.
To your point, I think if we keep everything as a department unto its own, it's gonna be ultimately better for the cost controls and everything else moving forward.
I agree.
And to be fair, staff didn't, they put it out as an option. But realistically, the idea was just that costs can be offset in one place versus another. Yeah, as far as the option to transfer, it's possible. So I applaud that staff brought that to us, right? I will never support it, but I'm glad that you brought it to us because it's on the table and we should discuss it.
Now you know
Okay.
what not to support.
We've all known
From a-
what Mark
yeah,
has not
from a-
supported.
From a council
A decade.
standpoint, is there consensus to look at the rates that we currently have with electric, do more research, come up with?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, staff, does that give direction with that?
Could we have something available by budget?
No.
That'd be difficult.
I know it'd be difficult, but I mean, can we have something preliminary that we can chew on?
We'll try.
I mean,
We made sure to get the spreadsheet models that the consultants used.
Yeah.
The electric one's a little bit more complicated. It'll take a little bit longer to update.
Yeah.
But we can do that.
yeah, and I'm not trying to put too much pressure on you guys. I know that if we don't strike while the iron is hot, it sometimes gets overwhelmed by other priorities. So,
Yeah, I think we.
Don't worry, we're gonna get on it.
Yeah.
I'm just, realistically, I doubt we have enough.
I
mean,
don't
that's
think
normally a
Mark's
6 to
iron's gonna cool anytime soon.
no, it's going to get hotter and hotter. To be honest with you.
In regards to development fees, I assume that's something we're always
Evaluating.
monitoring,
Looking at the
looking
jurisdiction.
at.
Has
And
it-
not only just like Mark said, in a vacuum, all of them combined, we don't wanna be.
Well, we have that discussion all the time, because when new developers come in, particularly on the east side where you have no infrastructure, I mean, we have to look at, how we're going to, facilitate that growth, so, yeah.
Any further discussion on
Well, that was just electric and
wastewater?
Steve brought it up.
Right.
I've got something else, but if others have something, go ahead.
I have something else too, maybe the same thing, but go ahead, Mark.
So the spillway. Gardner Lake was a WAPA project that the federal government gave us. It was an asset, if you will, for a while because it was our water source. It's not an asset anymore. It's the broken down car in the driveway. And I'm saying that from the standpoint of we don't use it for anything that it was intended to be used for, as a water source. So the unfunded portion, I would like to see us look at either charging or licensing to be on the water, since that's the only part we can control. We don't control the land. Or we look to speak with the Gardner Lake Association, whatever the title is, I'm not 100% sure. Association, okay. Because 440, give or take 200 property owners out there $2,200 in 1 year, they can cover it. And we will deed them the lake. It's basically their private lake now. We can't use it for all intents and purposes because you can't even put a trail along the beach, if you will, the edge, because the properties are right up against it. We can't use it for a water source. It's something from an old time. It's 50 years out of date for the city. So I would like to see that funded not by this $23,000 for something they can't use, or not that they can't, that they don't use.
Okay, good. So, a couple things on that. The improvement or making the changes to the spillway, that is, can you briefly go through the need for that or why? Calvin?
So the past three inspections we've had of the dam and the spillway system, it's all kind of interconnected. They've all identified that as a necessary project just to shore up the long-term structure of the dam and spillway area. Currently, it is listed as the top priority on the SMAC funding list, and it will remain there until funded. So it's identified by the county as kind of the top need in stormwater funding right now.
Yeah, I was back and forth on this for a while. I know it's a serious, there's some serious structural potentially issues, especially along the spillway route. There are whole sections of concrete and rebar that are completely washed away. Obviously, if anybody's gone down that road, you know that road is unpassable now. It used to not be, it is now. It will never be passable, to be honest with you, because when the spillway gets reconditioned, it's going to be closed off for good. But the dam itself, the integrity of the dam itself is potentially in jeopardy, given the vegetation that's been growing up around it. Large trees have gotten into the earthen portion of the dam. We did cut back a lot of those trees in the last couple of years. Parks and Rec has done some work out there to try to clean up some of that as well. But there's a significant potential integrity issue if that is not addressed. And that's why the SMAC priority is so high. From the standpoint of funding, I think that it would behoove us to talk to the Lake Association. I don't think it should be done in isolation. Whether they're going to absorb the entire $400,000 cost is in exchange for deeding the lake back to them, I can tell you, they don't want the lake. They don't want the lake. And you can understand why. You can understand why.
Made by other people.
Well,
Yeah, Kay can eat it too.
but I'm just saying, they don't want the lake, and they're not interested in maintaining the lake.
That's
You
fine.
know, they want us to maintain the lake, which is the whole reason why they've been having, discussions about dredging for years and years, and that doesn't help the city of Gardner at all.
No.
So-
we should go back to them and give them a proposal, and it could.
So we're
be
going to
over a
pay
year or
them
two.
to manage the lake.
No, I want them to take care of
Or
basically
they're
a
gonna-
private lake that they can have.
Okay, so they're going to pay us the $400,000 to manage the lake as a private lake.
The only reason they pay us is because we get the grant and they don't. We would fix it, and then we deed it away.
And so they
And then they can maintain it from them.
pay a cost to pay more money. Because they're going to have to, once they get the lake, they're going to have to manage and maintain it.
That's true.
So
But there's an alternative.
what's the alternative?
Drain it. Then I don't have to worry about the dam. And I guarantee you it's less than $500,000. It's an asset I can't use. Once your car outlives its life, you eventually donate it away or it's in the back 40 somewhere.
When we moved here 3 years ago, one of the first articles I read was the whole dredging of the lake paid for by Gardner, this whole scenario. And I thought it was the single most ridiculous arrangement I've ever seen in my life.
Well, the whole lake
So-
arrangement's kind of ridiculous. But that's beside the point.
That's,
Yeah, it's
I'm kind of with Mark on this, where we're sitting here paying for an asset that we don't really own. We can't really use. And I really wouldn't have
1958.
a problem dropping the deed off at the front door saying it's your baby now.
1958. It's been there for a long, long time.
So is the bill.
Well, I get it. So
The current, but the current spillway with the lake not drained, we have liability for that, is that to fix that as the city?
Yeah, as long as we own the dam. If it fails, it's on us.
Right. So,
I mean, to me, this is just like the old Justice Center. It sat there, it was horrible, eventually you tear it down. Well, and I'm not trying not to tear it down, I'm trying to let them keep their lake. But, you know, because some of them want to boat on it, or they just like to look at the pretty water. No problem with that, but here, we're passing the torch, it's yours.
If we used your idea of paying to get on the water, we don't have, I mean,
The problem with that is enforcement.
right, I was gonna say, cause like, you know, when we go to Hillsdale, we drive through the little booth and show our thing and.
I mean, we could, with dock permit fees, we could raise that up and collect that way. And we couldn't control who's on the water when that way, but that's the problem with,
And with no enforcement or no, you know,
Yeah.
we don't know actually how many Gardner residents put their boat in and pull it out. So it could be several, it could be none, it could be.
Well, I think it doesn't fit more than 6.
all right.
that's
What I'm
the
saying is
problem
it's
with-
not a large enough lake to have a ton of Gardner residents going there for the weekend. And that, like Mark pointed out, there's no beach to go and enjoy. So it really is a private lake for, 1,000 residents maybe, that the city of Gardner residents are paying for, getting no usage of.
And we don't have to do it all in 1 year, right? We're not doing the spillway necessarily this year. We don't necessarily have to do it in 2023.
Well,
Right? I know
the
we gotta do it
longer
sooner
it
than later.
goes, the more of a chance that there's going to be a structural
Understand that.
failure.
But, you know, if we work something out with them and we do it at the beginning of 2024, we've got that wiggle room, correct? I mean, we never know when it's gonna fail.
Yeah, we can, the SMAC funds will be there pretty much any year that we ask for them. We've got till Friday to say whether we want the 23 funds.
I did have a discussion this fall with somebody that lives at the lake, and they made mention that maybe Johnson County would be interested in taking
They're not
over the lake.
interested. They're not interested. We talked with Johnson County. They have no interest whatsoever in that lake.
It was the guy that brings the calendars to us.
Yeah,
that's
I
in
know.
charge.
Larry, yeah.
Yeah.
I talked to Larry, and he brought that up. It's like, well, what about the county? And Jim, you and I have both had that discussion with the county, and it's not pretty.
I mean,
No, they don't want it. They don't
there's
want
always
it.
the potential that the county or the state find renewed interest in it when we start draining it.
Well, again,
Maybe it becomes a state fishing lake
Again.
overnight. You never know.
I
We'll continue to look for grants.
yeah, yeah. Let's look for some more.
Maybe something will open up with the infrastructure funds that will.
I don't think we should be as extreme as Mark is draining it, but I do think it's worth looking at and trying to find options and resources.
Well, there's also another option, and that is if they want the city of Gardner to continue to be involved in this, that they agree to annexation and they start paying city tax, and that would help to pay for the expenses all over the lake.
That's true.
And we had talked to them a long time ago about that, and the problem there is you've got 80% of the people out of Gardner Lake that don't want to be in Gardner.
But that opens up a whole new can of worms
Mhm.
of the roads out there.
Well, that's what I'm
that
saying,
we
but
don't wanna-
you-
Yeah, I
but
don't
if
know
you've
if
got
that would
people
actually gain
paying-
us anything.
Yeah, I think
If you've
we'd
got
lose.
people paying property tax and road tax out there, yes, we could do the roads, we could improve those.
But I don't know if you'd make any money. The annexation there, you'd have to run all those numbers for those roads and maintenance
Oh, and
and
we,
everything else. I don't know if it would actually be advantageous to annex them.
but it would be less expensive overall because we could at least get that in tax revenues.
No, that's what I'm saying. The tax revenue and the expenses
Mhm.
might be upside down.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And if they're upside down, now you have to pay for this. You're going to support them even more. For what?
Yeah,
I can't do it.
I'm just trying to think outside the box, Mark, but I don't want to have it just be like a stinking cesspool either.
I get that, but the problem is that And I've been happy to look at doing grants or anything else for years, but
Mhm.
I've been up here 5 years, and the SMAC is the best we've ever done.
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna get $700,000, $800,000 in grant funds. If we do, by all means, we'll fix it. I'll still be willing to deed it to them the day after it's fixed. But until then, we have to find a way to fund it, and I don't want it coming out of the general fund.
So I'll just offer this.
Yeah.
There are alternative ways that it can be funded and funded by the residents who are served by the lake. We could explore those with the county, and that
Like
could
an
be-
HOA?
No, you can do a benefit district.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
And the county could establish that.
Yes, they could.
And then the people who are served by it would basically consent or not consent, and if you get a majority of the homeowners who want to come in under it, then the benefit district is established, and you can have assessments on the property served. I mean,
It took 12 years for them to agree to a benefit district for sewers.
I'm just saying that's another option you all have.
I know,
Thank you.
But I don't know if we have 12 years either to wait for them to
Yeah.
accede to a.
You're right.
Then, I know.
He's right, it probably won't happen, but we should at least explore.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think we need to get members of the Gardner Lake Association in here, and we need to have a come to Jesus
Well, it
session.
sounds like we have 3 days to ask them what they want to do.
Well, 2023. I mean, so, you know, what's everybody's thoughts on that?
We have until Friday to tell them if we want to do this in 2023.
But that doesn't mean we have to do it in 2023. Is that correct? We could push it back based on circumstances. I would say we go.
We've pushed it for the last 2 years, so yeah, we can do that.
All right. Well, let's just do that then. We just say, okay, we're gonna try to get this done in 2023. We'll get together with the Lake Association, try to come up with a solution that's best for.
It would mean we get with them, we need to get with them regardless.
Yes.
Okay. And then it would be, we'll try to get this to 2024 if we can work this out. And that means we could collect funds or whatever we need to do in 2023 or start a benefit.
You could
district
probably
or
start
anything.
some of the work in 2023. So.
Whatever they collected.
Mm-hmm.
We have the design complete at this point. We're just asking for construction funds, so we would ask
Yep.
for those in the year that we would be.
Okay. Do we have consensus then that we move forward on 2023?
No, push it to twenty
Yeah,
twenty-four.
absolutely.
Okay, that means that we can't do anything in 2023.
Agreed.
Okay, and
That's consensus.
yeah, the concern I have is that the spillway degradation is going to accelerate. If we have a particularly wet
We
year,
can drain it halfway in 2023
oh my goodness.
and then see where it goes
No.
and then either drain it the rest of the way or let rain fill it
Mark, I
back
don't
up.
think that's an option, okay?
I'm 100% serious.
I know, and I don't think it's an option.
I don't know why. If you are worried about liability, I'm offsetting it. I'm putting less pressure on the dam, nothing on the spillway.
And
You
you
don't have
want
a lot
you
of
want to
options
be
here.
you want to be in the Gardner News on Wednesday, don't you?
And
And rile up 250 people over at Gardner
regardless
Lake.
of if it's well received or not, this is what's on the table because there aren't options here. There isn't money available for this. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying this is what it is, black and white.
All right.
So, just real quick, based on the last dam inspection, there's no sign of imminent failure of the spillway.
Of the spillway.
Of
Okay.
the spillway.
All right.
It is in very poor shape. It needs to be fixed, but it is not going to fail.
In the next year or
imminently.
2 years. Okay. That's
Got time.
that
So
is
consensus
comforting.
is we will look at this.
Is there less of a failure if it's half empty?
You want to get in the Gardner News too, don't you, Eric?
I'm just exploring options.
We need to have the conversation with the Lake Association
Yes.
immediately.
Yes.
But-
Yes, Todd, there
Maybe
is
2020.
consensus to
Yes.
push this to 2024.
Yes.
There's consensus.
All right, moving on.
It means it's still in the CIP.
Okay, any other questions, concerns, comments?
I've done my damage.
I can see the headlines.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Okay.
thank you. Thanks, Matt.
Matt, that was really good.
We'll buy you a drink next time.
Okay, moving on, public hearings. Hold a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to request a waiver of the distance limitation to allow for sale of sealed domestic table wine within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the weekly Gardner Farmers Markets. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Motion Van Potter, second Baldwin, that we open the public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to request for a waiver of the distance limitation to allow for the sale of sealed domestic table wine within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the weekly farmers market events to be held on Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. from May 26, 2022 to September 8, 2022. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Do I nail this? All right, hearing is open. No one's coming forward. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shoot, second Baldwin. We close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Public hearing is closed. Public comments. This time, members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you wish to come forward, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. There is a 5-minute time clock to your left. No profanity, no personal attacks. That being said, come forward and state your name and address for the record. The podium is now open. No public comments. Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. Is there a council member who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove item number 4.
A motion for consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Shoot. Do we approve consent agenda items number 1, 2, and 3? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3 pass. Consent agenda item number 4. Councilmember Shoot.
Yeah, Gons, what is the trigger for this? I did read I just for the purposes of people at home, what was the rotor assembly was the precipitant for that?
Kill Creek has 4 rotors. They used to, they're part of the oxidation basin or ditch. So with the rotors, we create oxygen so we can control the bacteria or the microorganism growth. So back in March, one of the rotors fell into the basin. So we had to rescue the rotor. The rotor has been in place for almost 15 years. So Kruger, which is the OEM, they have the parts, materials available.
Okay.
So they provided a quote for parts. When I presented this item back last month or last couple of weeks, I missed that it did not include the labor.
Okay.
So we're asking additional, I think, $11,000,
Sure.
so we can get the parts and have Kruger do the installation of the rotor.
Okay, great.
They will also go ahead and check the other 3 rotors, make sure there is no mechanical damage or potential problems.
Okay. So it just fell off. The rotor just fell off and
Yes, sir.
ended up in the.
Yeah, apparently, it damaged the end bearing, and there was no support, so it just fell into the basin or the ditch.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that you came to us with this, and my concern is that, and you just addressed it, that the other rotors are going to be looked at, make sure that we are up to spec on those. So I think that was the question I had. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Is there a motion for consent agenda item number 4?
So made.
Second.
Motion Van Potter, second Shoot. We approve consent agenda item number 4. Consider authorizing the execution of a supplemental contract with Kruger to install a rotor assembly at the Kill Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Abstain? Consent agenda item number 4 passes. No planning and zoning consent agenda, no committee recommendations. Old business. Old business item number 1. Consider authorizing the execution of a contract with 1-800-GOT-JUNK for the 2022 citywide cleanup.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So after essentially experiencing a bid bust on our first go-round for the 2022 citywide cleanup, staff explored some additional options that maybe hadn't been contacted before. We got a bid from 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Their bid was $300 a ton for the first 100 tons, which would be the guaranteed minimum. So a guaranteed minimum of $30,000 for the contract. For illustration purposes, last year's pickup was about 94 tons with the same restrictions that we have on this year's. The continuing price per ton beyond that first 100 is $200 a ton for anything above that per their bid. The additional item of note is they did include in their bid that they would pick up household appliances. So it's an additional, I guess, tonnage that might be added onto that expected kind of 100 tons. So we would expect it to be somewhere between 100 and 200 tons, something like that. Within the budgeted $60,000, that would cover really up to 250 tons, which is probably more than I would expect to pick up even with the addition of appliances. So with that said, recommend authorizing the contract. It is certainly up to the council whether to do so.
Is there any public comment on old business item number 1? Okay. Council.
Mark?
Did staff solicit 1-800-GOT-JUNK, or did they freely come to us?
I'll have to check, but we did contact some additional folks.
I like that they're willing to put in a bid, and it's reasonable. So I'd like to keep them on the Rolodex for if there's something we could use them for, but I don't support spending the money this way, as you've all heard. So
That's why I
nothing changes
deferred
for
to
me.
you.
Well, I personally like that we have a better option than we did last time, so I would support this.
Tie ball game.
I still think that it would be, from the standpoint, I know where you're coming from, Mark, that, this is not really a service that the city should be involved in.
No.
I think that's your mention. I think it's an amenity. It's something that separates us from other communities, I think, from the standpoint of being able to let people get rid of their junk in an expeditious manner, curbside pickup and all that stuff, that people can do that also individually. What can we do with the $60,000 that's been budgeted?
We
Hire
did some of
somebody.
it last meeting,
Mm-hmm.
right? We did do the 1% COLA.
No, I think that's the question. Do we give it back?
I think we
That's about a third of a
decide
mil.
on this and whether on its own merits,
Quarter of a mil.
and then we evaluate the rest.
I mean, I'm just saying that if this is expense for something, then it's got to be,
Well, it
Yeah,
puts
you
us
can
$60,000 closer to not draining the lake.
True. I mean, I think this is something we had budgeted for, though, but
Yep, we did.
coming into it, and I mean, I think it's a service. It's a amenity, a service.
That's what I said. It separates us from other communities.
I think
Actually,
it's
I
awesome.
think we're in the minority. Some communities offer this weekly.
I'm not aware of any other jurisdictions that do a citywide cleanup.
No.
I know
There-
Overland
Park eliminated it.
Overland
They-
Park
that's on
eliminated it
request
this
by
year.
fee.
I think Liberty, Missouri might do one time a month. You can do
One time
some
a
sort of
month.
large item pickup.
Well, and that was the thing before is when we calculated it, for the number of people that used it, we estimated, of course, we don't have a good number. But Gardner Disposal is willing to pick up your stuff for $30.
Yeah.
So
But a lot of people, there's a number of people that this might help clean up some stuff, in their
Beautify their
around the house.
properties.
Yeah. That's a benefit as well.
If it's narrowly defined, I would still be in favor of it. But again, the problem with this in the past has been it's not been narrowly defined and it continues to increase. So we do it for this year for when it got, is this 1 year contract, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're back at this again next year.
I think it should be revisited every year.
Yep.
The problem is,
But it sounds like you can lock in a lower rate too for about a year.
similar to like fireworks, you did it once and then we have to revisit it every year and it comes to be something that people expect. So
Well, they've expected.
people plan for a citywide cleanup because
Mhm.
it was in the budget, and so they didn't contact their disposal company or didn't contact any of those because it was budgeted and expected.
Mhm.
This is definitely a better option than what we had last meeting.
I mean, to your point, last year we were wavering on it. People already kind of knew. We already canceled it for this year, essentially.
That's my biggest concern is that we canceled it for this year, so people have found other means, and are we going to have even less participation because of that? We announced that it wasn't happening, so people got their stuff picked up by the individuals that offer, they contacted their disposal company, they rented their own dumpsters, you know? So is it gonna be even less participation, and we pay $30,000 for 50 tons, like we paid $40,000 for 92 tons last year?
If it's there, people will use it. If it's there, people will use it.
I think people will use it.
I mean,
It's gonna be right after the garage sale,
Yep.
which is this next weekend.
mm-hmm. It's where a lot of people get rid of a lot of that stuff that didn't sell at garage sales. It's been that way for
But
many,
you
many
can't.
years.
There's no bagged items, you are allowed 4 large items.
Yes, I agree.
Well,
A lot of people try to sell at a garage sale items. A lot of people do try to sell large items. I mean, they'll hold them until, put it in their garage until May, and then put it on the curb.
Try to sell it, and if they can't sell it,
Then they
at the
then they
garage
toss
sale,
it.
they put it out.
Yep. And the scrappers come through usually the night before and take everything that they can take, and then whatever's left is picked up by the garbage guys.
I mean, that's always the option. Designate a weekend as scrapper day.
Yeah.
Make it Saturday so you can call it Scrapper Day. I mean,
Well, I mean, you know, we budgeted 60,000, and it's probably gonna come in closer to 30,000. Probably.
well, if that's the case, then if the intention is truly to stop the program, we need to remove it from the budget.
Right. But it was a 2-year budget, it was already in there.
Mm-hmm.
But a budget is a plan. It's not
I
a
agree.
guarantee.
I agree.
And while a better rate, it's still a nicety, not a.
I wouldn't have saved $20 if I didn't spend 100.
Well, is there a motion?
I make a motion that we consider authorizing the exact execution of a contract with 1-800 Got Junk for the 2022 citywide cleanup.
I'll second it.
I just want to make sure you said consider authorizing. Are you saying
You must authorize the city administrator to.
Oh, I guess I just read the thing.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's
that we authorize this, I'll amend it to that we authorize the city administrator to execute a contract. As
So, yeah, we have a second motion, Roberts. Second, Deaton, that we authorize the city administrator to execute a contract with 1-800 Got Junk for the 2022 citywide cleanup for a guaranteed total of $30,000, and authorize the city administrator to approve additional cost of $200 per ton based on actual tonnage collected. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes
3-2.
3-2. Abstain. All right, here we go. Okay, moving on to new business. Consider a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of domestic, I'm gonna get tired of reading this. Sale of domestic table wine within 200 feet of school, church, or library during the weekly farmers market events to be held on Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. from May 26, 2022 to September 8th, 2022. City Clerk Sharon Rose.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a housekeeping item in relation to the public hearing we had at the beginning of the meeting. This is, again, for the Gardner Farmers Market. They have requested to be able to sell sealed table wine at the farmers markets weekly during the summer. They do have one vendor that is interested in having a booth there.
Is there any public comment?
I can't have public comment.
Already had
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Already had a public hearing.
We already have. Okay, council.
None. Let's just vote.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion Shoot, second Baldwin. That we approve a request for a waiver of the distance limitation to allow for the sale of sealed domestic table wine within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the weekly farmers markets events to be held on Thursdays, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. from May 26, 2022 to September 8th, 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? New business item number 1 passes. All right, we will move into council updates. Start with Chief Belcher.
Nothing tonight?
City Clerk.
So there will be 3 terms coming to an end on the Planning Commission in June. I have reached out to the 3 members, and so far none of them have selected to reapply, and I will be posting the openings tomorrow.
Do you know which 3?
Adriana Bader, Stacy Cooper, and Austin Judeman. Yeah.
We'd love to have some continuity on our planning commission. That's, yeah. Okay.
I'll send a follow-up email probably tomorrow.
Please do.
Just to remind them.
Is
Yeah.
Commissioner Mader getting termed out?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, she is termed
Oh,
out?
no, she's not.
No, not
No,
yet.
no, she's not
No,
termed
she
out.
can serve an additional term if she did.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember how many.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are
All
termed out.
3 of them
No,
can
she's the only
choose.
one.
Yes.
Enough. Okay.
Yeah.
All 3 of them can reapply to.
That's my
another
concern.
issues.
Yeah, we have a relatively young planning commission. I would not want to see those have to be replaced again. I know Austin just came on like a year ago, didn't he?
Yeah, he
Austin.
fulfilled a vacant
Yeah.
term.
Yeah,
So-
Zuman and Cooper came on within the last year, a
Yeah.
little over a year, and then we've had 2 others in
Yeah.
that same period of time.
I think this might just be a situation where they didn't check their email or haven't responded.
And I do still have 2 unsolicited applications on file.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
All right. Finance Director Madeline.
Yeah, the development of the CIP involves a lot of different departments. So I just want to say thank you to all the department directors and their staff for their contributions. In particular, Utilities Department, Gons, and Kellen in the Public Works had most of the projects. So appreciate them and all their staff's work on the CIP.
I mentioned this earlier, but I appreciated the highlights on the CIP and how condensed it was and straightforward. So thank you for putting this together. Anything else? Anything else? No? Okay.
So that's it. Sorry.
Deputy Administrator Amos.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
City Attorney.
Nothing for me.
City Administrator.
Nothing for me.
Gons.
Couple of items. The first one is the contractor started the excavation of the west lift station at Prairie Trace. We have a completion date of August 1st.
Great.
So hopefully we'll keep Travis happy.
Hopefully the weather will be better.
Then you were talking about making an adjustment to the electric rate. And the price of gas in 2020 was about $2. 2021 was about less than $3. Right now it's about $3 and change. It's expected to go up to about $6.60 for the next 12 months.
Yeah.
And then it will go down to about $4.50.
Yep.
So that will definitely have an impact on the rates.
And is that the wholesale rate? Is that the market? Is that spot price or is that the contract
That's
rate?
the price that municipalities, the cost to buy gas for generation.
Has KMEA discussed the possibility of hedges? To try to keep
I think they did early,
yeah.
but this is something that just happened within the past 2 weeks.
Is it because of the cutoff of shipments to Western Europe from Russia?
Probably because of, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
That's probably
Okay.
the main reason.
And I did send a newsletter to all of you from KMEA.
Yep, I saw that. Okay. Well, keep us apprised on that, because that is going to affect our electric rates potentially.
And this is just FYI, Gardner Lake has a spring that recharges the lake, so you can never drain the lake.
You just have to keep it low enough to not cause a problem.
Can we dam the spring?
Oh gosh. Yeah, let's fill it with concrete. Right? Gosh. Come on, guys.
Oh, boy.
Thanks, Cons.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate that nugget.
Parks and Rec.
Nothing this evening.
Community Development.
Nothing for me.
Public Works.
Nothing further tonight.
Any quick update on Main Street?
The redesign had been accepted. They're back to work. Weather obviously is gonna play in a little bit. So
They're talking about like giant potholes now, filling with water on the side of the.
Rated it all nice, and then it.
And it fills with water, exactly.
One big pop. All right. Councilmember Van Potter.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Roberts.
Yes, I liked that we had the State of the City combined with the Chamber
Yeah.
event. It seemed like it was well represented. There was lots of people there. And I'm sure that was a cost savings to the city to do it combined. So I would be for one if we could maybe look at that in the future. And also, Mayor Todd did a great job. He was very funny. Who knew he had such humor? And it was an excellent speech.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Was it funny because it was an expensive Steve, or
It was just funny.
Yes.
just checking?
Yeah. Well, people know me and how I operate. So.
It was
It's
funny.
a refreshing change. Let's just put it that way.
It was funny, but most importantly, it saved the city money, which is good.
Yes.
Councilmember Dean.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Council Vice President.
Yeah. So I also want to thank the staff. I know that putting your CIP, especially in the challenging times we're dealing with right now, is difficult. And I do appreciate the work that staff put in. And just keep going. I know we've got a budget cycle now we're having to start to prepare for too. So your work never ends, Matt. So thank you.
Council President.
I just wanted to point out that the park projects that are listed in the CIP, Jason, those do have our inclusive improvements that we want to put in. Okay. I just want to make sure that was out to everybody else. That's all I have.
And I don't have anything this evening. So is there a motion to close the meeting?
Can't close the meeting. Point of order.
Okay, I apologize.
It's on page
It's on the
2.
other page.
I mean, if we can get a second on the adjournment first.
All right. Is there a motion for executive session?
So moved.
How long?
Second.
Yeah, how long is it? 20 minutes?
Might revisit that adjournment.
Yeah.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. Or recess into executive session.
Point of order, I made the motion.
You, Steve.
You did?
Yes.
Sorry. Motion. I was the second Baldwin. That we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 to discuss matters of attorney-client privilege related to the Big Bull Creek wastewater treatment plant contract, beginning at 8:09 and returning to regular session at 8:29 p.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
let's go.
It's 8:29. I have a motion to resume.
So moved.
Regular session.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Deaton, resume regular session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, abstained. Back in session. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shoot, second Van Potter, that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed,